For centuries, we've been taught that Eve was the first woman God created. But what if there's more to the story? What if there's an ancient secret hidden in the Bible, forgotten texts, and old legends that tells a different tale? In today's video, we'll explore the mysterious story of Lilith, a figure who might have been the first woman created before Eve. Her story has been erased, kept in secrecy, and her name removed from the scriptures. Who was Lilith? Why was her story hidden? And what does this mystery reveal about humanity's creation, the battle between good and evil, and even end times prophecy? Stay with us as we uncover rare archaeological discoveries, dive into lost Jewish writings, and connect hidden messages that many Christians may not have heard before. If you think you know the Bible's creation story, think again. This untold story could challenge what we've always believed. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, have you ever heard of Lilith? Do you think there could be more to the creation story than we've been taught? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content, and share it with your friends and family so they can join this journey of discovery. Let's get started. We'll begin with the familiar story most of us know, the creation of Adam and Eve. This story is found in the first chapters of Genesis, which lays the foundation for the entire Bible. It tells how God created the first humans to live in harmony with Him and the world He made. In Genesis chapter 1, we read about the creation of humans. The Bible says, "So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them." Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. The word man here comes from the Hebrew word Adam, which can mean humanity or mankind. This verse shows that both male and female were created together in God's image with equal worth and value. This part of the story is poetic and focuses on the idea that humans reflect God's character. But this raises an interesting question. If both male and female were created at the same time in Genesis chapter 1, why does Genesis chapter 2 tell a different, more detailed version? Genesis chapter 2 goes into specifics about how God created Adam first. In Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, it says, "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." After creating Adam, God placed him in the Garden of Eden, a paradise full of everything he needed. But God saw that Adam was alone, and this wasn't good. In Genesis chapter 2 verse 18, God says, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." God put Adam into a deep sleep and created Eve, the first woman, from one of Adam's ribs. This act has often been understood as a symbol of unity and partnership. Eve was formed from Adam's side, not from his head or feet, showing equality and companionship. For centuries, the story of Adam and Eve has been taught as the foundation of humanity's origin. It tells of creation, partnership, and the first human experience in paradise. This story also introduces the fall of humanity through disobedience, leading to their removal from the Garden of Eden. This event is seen as the beginning of human sin and separation from God. Over time, this account has influenced how people understand human nature, gender roles, and relationships between men and women in cultures around the world. Eve being created from Adam's rib has been interpreted to mean she was made as an equal yet distinct companion for Adam. But when we look more closely at the text, especially in the original Hebrew, some questions arise. For example, Genesis chapter 1 describes male and female being created together, while Genesis chapter 2 gives a different sequence of events. Could this mean another woman existed before Eve, a woman who has been overlooked or left out of the traditional story? Some scholars believe the two creation accounts in Genesis may point to something deeper. Genesis chapter 1 might describe the creation of humanity as a whole, male and female created at the same time, while Genesis chapter 2 focuses specifically on Adam and Eve's story. This difference has led to debates for centuries. One fascinating theory suggests that a woman existed before Eve. Could the simultaneous creation of male and female in Genesis chapter 1 hint at another woman before Eve, a woman who was removed or forgotten in the traditional story? This mystery becomes even more intriguing when we look at ancient Jewish texts and folklore, which speak of a woman named Lilith. According to these stories, Lilith was created as Adam's equal, but refused her role, leading to her removal and the later creation of Eve. The traditional story of Adam and Eve is widely known, but it might not be the full story. Legends about a figure like Lilith suggest there could be more to the creation narrative than what's in the Bible. Lilith's story isn't part of the official biblical text, but it appears in ancient writings, folklore, and even archaeological findings. So, was Eve truly the first woman? Or is there another chapter to the creation story that challenges what we think we know? To find out, we'll explore ancient texts, archaeological discoveries, and the mysteries hidden between the lines of Scripture. In the next part, we'll dive into the ancient Hebrew texts to uncover clues about the possibility of a woman before Eve. Stay with us as we uncover a hidden story that could transform how we understand the Bible's creation narrative. To understand the deeper mysteries of the creation story, we need to closely examine the original Hebrew texts in Genesis. Modern translations often miss some of the subtleties of the ancient language, which can lead to confusion. By going back to the Hebrew, we can uncover a clearer meaning. In the first chapter of Genesis, the word used for man is Adam. In Hebrew, Adam doesn't specifically mean a male individual. Instead, it's a general term that can mean human, mankind, or humankind. This broader meaning suggests that Genesis chapter 1 might be referring to the creation of both male and female as part of humanity, rather than focusing on a single man named Adam. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 to 27, it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man Adam in our image, according to our likeness.' So God created man Adam in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them." Here, the creation of Adam is followed by the mention of male and female. The original Hebrew uses the terms zakar and nekeba, meaning male and female, instead of specifically naming Adam and Eve. This suggests that God created male and female humans together at the same time as part of the collective Adam. The two creation accounts in Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2, seem to follow different timelines. In Genesis chapter 1, male and female are created simultaneously, but in Genesis chapter 2, we read a more detailed story where Adam is formed first and Eve is created later from Adam's rib. This difference has been debated by scholars and theologians for centuries. Some scholars believe Genesis chapter 1 gives a poetic overall view of creation, while Genesis chapter 2 focuses specifically on Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. However, the differences between these accounts have led some to wonder if Genesis chapter 1 might be describing the creation of another woman, one who existed before Eve. One fascinating theory is about Lilith, thought by some to be the first woman created alongside Adam in Genesis chapter 1. Although Lilith isn't mentioned by name in the Bible, she appears in ancient Jewish writings and folklore. The earliest references to Lilith are found in the Midrash and the alphabet of Ben Sira, Jewish texts from the early centuries CE. According to these writings, Lilith was created as Adam's equal, formed from the same dust of the earth. However, her story takes a dramatic turn when she refuses to submit to Adam, insisting on her equality and independence. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 27, it says, "Male and female he created them." The use of the plural them is significant. It suggests the simultaneous creation of two beings. In the original Hebrew, the structure of this sentence implies that God created a pair of distinct individuals at the same time, not just one man followed by a woman later. The traditional view is that Genesis chapter 1 refers to Adam and Eve being created together. However, this doesn't fully explain the timeline difference between Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2. If male and female were already created together in Genesis chapter 1, why was there a need for a separate creation of Eve in Genesis 2? In Genesis chapter 2 verse 18, it says, "The Lord God said, 'It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him.'" The word helper here comes from the Hebrew word Ezer, which is often misunderstood. Ezra does not mean a subordinate or someone lesser. In fact, it is used in other parts of the Bible to describe God as a helper and deliverer. This shows that Eve was created as an equal partner to Adam, not someone inferior. But if Genesis chapter 1 already describes male and female being created, why does God create a separate helper in Genesis chapter 2? This question has led some scholars to suggest that the helper in Genesis chapter 2 was not the first woman, but a replacement for an earlier woman, Lilith, who left Adam after a conflict. If Lilith was the first woman, this would change how we understand the Genesis story. It could mean there was an earlier creation of a female figure, equal to Adam, who rejected traditional roles and was excluded from the biblical narrative. According to this idea, Eve was created as a helper to replace Lilith, who was seen as rebellious. The idea of Lilith challenges the traditional story of Genesis and opens up new discussions about gender roles, equality, and the complexities of early human relationships in ancient texts. In the next part, we will explore more about Lilith, her origins in Jewish folklore, her role in ancient mythology, and possible archaeological evidence supporting her story. Stay with us as we uncover the mystery of Lilith, the woman who may have been forgotten by history. Lilith's story is one of the most mysterious and debated topics in Jewish folklore. Although her name isn't mentioned in the Bible, she appears in various early Jewish writings, including the Midrash, the alphabet of Ben Sira, and mystical texts, like the Zohar. Over time, she has become a symbol of independence, rebellion, and the untold stories of the Bible. Early references to Lilith describe her as the first woman created by God, made at the same time as Adam, rather than from his rib like Eve. This idea comes from the Midrash, a collection of Jewish interpretations of the Bible. These writings say Lilith was formed from the same dust as Adam, making her his equal in every way. However, the story takes a dramatic turn when conflict arises between Lilith and Adam. According to the legend, Lilith refused to submit to Adam's authority, especially when he tried to dominate her. Feeling disrespected, Lilith spoke God's name and left the Garden of Eden, choosing freedom and independence over submission. This decision would forever change her fate and leave her as a controversial figure in ancient history. The conflict between Lilith and Adam highlights an important theme: the struggle for equality and independence. Unlike Eve, who was created as Adam's helper, Lilith was made as his equal. However, her refusal to submit to Adam was seen as rebellion, and her decision to leave the Garden of Eden transformed her into a figure of myth and legend. One of the most detailed accounts of Lilith's story comes from the alphabet of Ben Sira, a Jewish text from the 8th or 9th century CE. While it's not part of the Bible, this text gives us insight into Jewish folklore and mystical traditions. According to the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith left the Garden of Eden and settled by the Red Sea. There she was said to have consorted with demons and become the mother of demonic offspring called the Lilan. God sent 3 angels, Senoi, Sansonoi, and Samangaloth, to bring her back, but Lilith refused. She chose independence over returning to Eden, insisting she would not live in subservience. Her defiance solidified her role in Jewish folklore as a symbol of rebellion and freedom. Over time, her association with demons and the supernatural grew, making her both a figure of fear and intrigue. Interestingly, Lilith's story is not limited to Jewish tradition. Similar figures appear in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. In early Sumerian and Babylonian writings, a female spirit named Lilith is mentioned. Lilith was linked to the wind and the night and portrayed as a powerful, independent woman who refused to be controlled by men. Some scholars believe the Jewish Lilith was inspired by the Sumerian Lilith. This connection suggests a shared cultural myth of a strong, autonomous woman who challenged traditional roles. In ancient times, women like this were often feared and demonized, leading to portrayals of them as dangerous seductresses or night demons. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, a famous Mesopotamian story, there is a reference to a demonic figure in the Hulupu tree, often associated with Lilith. This figure is described as a bird-like creature living in darkness, reinforcing the idea of Lilith as a nocturnal spirit. Although Lilith's name doesn't appear in most translations of the Bible, there is a mysterious reference in Isaiah, chapter-verse that has sparked debate among scholars. The verse says, "The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the screech owl Lilith shall rest there." In the original Hebrew text, the word used is Lilith, which closely resembles the name Lilith. Many English translations interpret this word as screech owl or night creature, but the Hebrew term carries deeper meanings. It is linked to darkness, desolation, and the supernatural, matching the mythological image of Lilith as a night demon or spirit of the wind. Some biblical scholars believe this verse could be a subtle reference to the Lilith legend. In Isaiah chapter 34, the passage paints a picture of complete desolation and chaos, a setting that fits with Lilith's portrayal as a wilderness-dwelling creature. This connection suggests that the authors of Isaiah may have been familiar with the Lilith story, weaving it into a prophetic vision of judgment and ruin. Lilith's story didn't end when she left Eden. Over time, her character evolved in Jewish folklore and mystical writings. While Lilith started as Adam's equal partner, she was later depicted as a demoness, a seductress, and the mother of demons. In the Zohar, a key text in Jewish mysticism, Lilith is called the first Eve, cast out for her disobedience. This shift from a strong, independent woman to a demonic figure reflects broader societal views of female independence and rebellion. In a patriarchal society, a woman who refused to submit to male authority was often seen as dangerous. By portraying Lilith as a demon, ancient writers may have been warning against the risks of female autonomy and sexuality. In modern times, Lilith has been reimagined as a symbol of feminine strength and resistance. Feminist scholars and writers see her as a figure who refused to be controlled and chose her own path, even if it meant being an outcast. Her story is now a symbol of the fight for gender equality, challenging traditional narratives that present women as submissive or secondary. Lilith's story pushes us to rethink the creation narrative and the roles assigned to women in ancient texts. Was she a demon, a rebellious spirit, or simply a strong woman who refused to conform? The answer depends on how her story is viewed. Whether seen as a demon, a goddess, or a feminist icon, Lilith's story has lasted thousands of years. It gives us insight into ancient views of gender, power, and human relationships. Her legend invites us to look deeper into the Bible's text and the myths that influenced early beliefs. In the next section, we'll explore archaeological evidence that may support the idea of a woman before Eve. Ancient artifacts might reveal more about this forgotten chapter of history. Stay with us as we uncover the mysteries of the first woman who defied tradition. To understand where Lilith's story might have come from, we need to look at archaeological discoveries from ancient Mesopotamia, one of the world's earliest civilizations. Long before the Bible was written, the people of Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon told stories about strong, independent female spirits that resemble the later figure of Lilith in Jewish folklore. These ancient findings suggest that Lilith's story might be rooted in even older myths, stretching back to the earliest days of human history. Archaeologists have uncovered clay tablets from ancient Sumer, dating back to around 2000s BCE, that mention a figure called Lilitu. The name Lilitu sounds very similar to Lilith, and the descriptions of her match the Jewish myths that came much later. In these ancient texts, Lilitu is described as a female demon or spirit connected to the night and the wind. She was said to wander the wilderness, haunt empty places, and prey on men. The Sumerians saw Lilitu as both beautiful and dangerous, a seductive, independent spirit, unlike the typical submissive or nurturing women portrayed in other myths of the time. Lilitu acted on her own desires and didn't answer to any male authority, reflecting the rebellious nature later attributed to Lilith in Jewish folklore. Lilitu was also associated with the wind, an untamed and uncontrollable force, emphasizing her free and independent spirit. This connection to the wind might have inspired later Jewish ideas about Lilith as a spirit who could not be constrained. One of the most fascinating pieces of evidence is the Burney relief, a 4,000-year-old Mesopotamian artifact that shows a female figure with wings and bird-like talons. Some scholars believe this figure could represent Lilith. If true, this artifact suggests that the idea of a powerful pre-Eve woman existed in Mesopotamian cultures long before the biblical story of Adam and Eve was written. But if Lilith was created as Adam's equal and the first woman, why is she not included in the traditional biblical story? To find answers, we need to go beyond the Bible and look at other ancient writings, apocryphal texts, and manuscripts that were left out of the official biblical canon. These writings might contain clues about Lilith's lost story and the early beliefs about creation. One theory is that Lilith's story was intentionally left out or changed when the Bible was put together. The process of deciding which books and stories to include in the Bible, called canonization, was influenced by cultural, political, and theological reasons. Early Jewish leaders and church authorities may have found Lilith's story too controversial because it challenged the patriarchal ideas of the time. Lilith's refusal to submit to Adam and her rejection of traditional gender roles didn't fit the narrative of male authority and female subservience. By leaving out her story, the creators of the biblical canon could present a simpler version of creation, where Eve is the first and only woman made specifically to be a helper for Adam. This omission ensured that the creation story aligned with the societal norms of the time. The omission of Lilith's story may have been part of a larger effort to suppress ideas that didn't fit the traditional views of gender and family. A story about a rebellious first woman who refused to submit to her husband could have been seen as a challenge to the social order, leading to its exclusion from the official biblical texts. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 1940s changed how we understand the ancient biblical world. These scrolls, found in the Qumran caves near the Dead Sea, date back to the 2nd century BCE, and include some of the oldest known copies of biblical and other ancient writings. Among these texts are fragments that hint at stories and characters not included in the canonical Bible, possibly even references to a figure like Lilith. One of the most fascinating texts among the Dead Sea Scrolls is the Genesis Apocryphon, a retelling of the Genesis story with extra details not found in the Bible. This account contains vague references to a conflict between Adam and a first wife, which some scholars believe may point to Lilith. The fragments mention a woman created with Adam who later left him due to disagreements. This aligns with the legend of Lilith leaving the Garden of Eden. Although the fragments are incomplete and hard to interpret, they suggest that early Jewish communities may have known alternative creation stories, including the tale of a first wife who was not Eve. The inclusion of such stories in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were considered sacred by the Qumran community, shows that the legend of Lilith was more widely known and accepted in certain groups than we might have thought. Another ancient text, the Book of Enoch, offers more insights into supernatural beings and ancient beliefs. Though it is not part of the Bible, the Book of Enoch was highly respected in early Jewish and Christian communities. It contains detailed descriptions of fallen angels, demons, and other supernatural entities, giving us a glimpse into the mythology of the time. In the Book of Enoch, there are references to night spirits and demonic beings that align with descriptions of Lilith. These spirits are described as wandering the earth, causing harm and disrupting the natural order. While Lilith is not mentioned by name, the descriptions remind us of her role in later traditions as a spirit who preys on the vulnerable, especially at night. The Book of Enoch also introduces the concept of the Watchers, fallen angels who rebelled against God and took human wives, leading to the birth of the Nephilim. Some scholars see similarities between the Watchers and Lilith's story. Like the Watchers, Lilith defied divine order, challenging established norms and facing exile as a result. The decision to leave Lilith's story out of the Bible might reflect the influence of patriarchal norms in ancient times. As Jewish and Christian communities formed their beliefs and established official teachings, the portrayal of women in religious texts became more traditional. Stories of strong, independent women like Lilith, who challenged traditional gender roles, may have been viewed as a threat to the social order. By excluding or portraying such figures negatively, early Bible compilers were able to support a narrative that emphasized male authority and female submission. Lilith's transformation from an equal partner to a demon reflects this shift towards a more patriarchal perspective. The hints from the Bible and the apocryphal texts show a complex story of a figure who may have been left out of the official narrative but survived in myths and legends. Lilith's story, while hidden, still shaped religious beliefs and cultural traditions, offering a fascinating look at a forgotten part of the creation story. In conclusion, Lilith's story, whether myth or hidden history, encourages us to look deeper into the Bible and ancient texts. It challenges us to think beyond what we've been taught and consider that the story of creation may be more complex than we realize. Was Eve really the first woman? The answer might depend on how open you are to exploring these ancient mysteries. Whether you see Lilith's story as history or symbolism, one thing is clear: humanity's past is far richer and more complicated than we've been told. If you enjoyed this topic, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Lilith was the first woman? Are there other ancient mysteries you'd like us to explore? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next video.